Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're together in the Zera Shimshon share. We're in Parshat Vayeishev Oispeis. Vayeishev Yaakov. The Zera Shimshon is going to ask a very interesting kasha, and is going to delve deep into the question: what was wrong with Yaakov's bakasha to live in peace? What was wrong? Lamaisa, why wasn't it a valid taina? And on the contrary, it seemed that Hashem got angry at him. And as Rashi explains, Kaftzai alav roigze shel Yosef. So we're going to go 3 lines in, the kasha, or 4 lines in. Lama laha Yaakov leisha b'shalva. Why could Yaakov live b'shalva? Ve'isi be'bereshis Rabbah. We learn in the Medrash Bereshis Rabbah, al posik vayifret ze'ish ma'od ma'od, that Yaakov Avinu prospered an exceedingly amount. He became very wealthy. Shenifritza lo pirtza me'ein olam haba. That he was so wealthy that he got like a me'ein olam haba. That's how wealthy he was and how rich he was. So you see that Yaakov had some sort of menuchas hanefesh. He was very successful. So what was wrong with the bakasha to ask for shalva, to ask for peace, for calmness? Zera Shimshon explains that even someone who does not have any avera, in kol zeh eina yochel litoyes schore kodim zmanai. He cannot ask for his reward before the Zman. A person cannot ask for something that he's supposed to get, but they're klal before the Zman comes. Everything has a Zman. Everything has a time when it's going to happen, when a tzar is going to end, when a tzar is going to begin. The Gemara says that when a person gets a sickness, Hashem knows exactly the day it's going to end. As Shlomo Melech says, the chol Zman ve'es, there's a time for everything. And Memele, even a tzaddik that does not have any avera cannot ask for his reward before the Zman. The Zman hashtar hu la'achamisa. Because the shtar that Hashem pays you, right? Hashem owes you kaviyachol as a note, right? Every mitzvah you do, you get a reward. So that shtar, that payment, is only after 120 years. So you can't ask for it beforehand, right? If you lend somebody money and the note says, I give you 5 years to pay the loan, you can't come to him and say, demand payment beforehand. It's true, as we're going to see, if the guy wants to pay, that's a different story. But you can't go to the person and say, pay me right now. What do you mean, pay me right now? The note says I have 5 years. And therefore, the Zman hashtar hu la'achamisa. Like it says, hayom la'soison. Today you do the reward, you do the work, U'mochal, tomorrow, liteschorem. V'cheitzar hatzadikim evakshim leisha b'shalva. How could tzadikim ask to sit b'shalva? Ha'adayin le'gia zman hashtar li'yos. The shtar has not yet been, the time for the shtar has not yet come to be collected. Hashem wants to be mashpia toiva, zehu midas rachman chasadov. That's Hashem wants to do it. That's different. But to demand payment, demand I did a mitzvah, I want a reward now, that Hashem doesn't do. That's why we see tzaddikim, we saw by Moshe Rabbeinu, they always ask, matnas chinam. We don't deserve anything, Hashem. Whatever mitzvahs we did, we don't deserve anything. So we ask you for midas arachamim, midas chasidus, for matnas chinam, ki lef'amim af haloiva maktib lefroya shtore koidim zmanai. Sometimes Hashem, in His infinite wisdom, in His different cheshbonis that He has, says, okay, really, I don't have to pay you till 120 years. For whatever reason, I'll pay you early. Whatever the reason may be. Maybe he did a certain mitzvah, maybe he davened. Just like a borrower sometimes can pay early, right? The borrower can come to the lender and say, listen, I borrowed from you $100,000. I know I have 10 years to pay. I'm going to give you a little bit now. This way, I mocked him some of the money beforehand. He has the right to do it. We still need limudai. Limudai is a reference to Rabbi Eliezer Hamudai. Rabbi Eliezer Hamudai was very clear in the Mishnah. Whenever there was a confusion, whenever they were not klar in a certain Indian, they would go to Rabbi Eliezer Hamudai, and he would able to cut through the noise, so to speak. He was very clear in the halacha. He's very clear in the shaklavataria. And after he said whatever the question was, everything became cleared up. So the Zera Shimshon is using a famous play on words. We still have some confusion, so we still need limudai. We still need to cut to the main point over here. Shari anu royim, we see shalaf avim hamalvim avakish melev shifloi ma'atmi mashachayvloi afa bishadayin legia zman apiroyin. The Zera Shimshon says there are many times that the lender will come to the borrower and says, listen, I know I gave you a year to pay. I know I gave you, X amount of time to pay, but, I'm tied to cash. Can you pay me a little early? It happens, even though the time to pay didn't come yet. The borrower can say, I'll pay you, I won't pay you. It's a common question. The borrower is not going to get angry if the lender calls him up. The lender can call him up and say, listen, Reuven, I lent you $100,000. I know I gave you 5 years to pay. I need some cash now. Can you give me $5,000? Can you give me $2,000? Can you give me $10,000? So the borrower can say, listen, I don't have the money right now. My calculation to get the payment is only going to come in such and such time. Or the borrower can say, you know what? Here's $2,000, here's $5,000. It happens all the time. The borrower is not going to get angry. He's not going to say, how you talking? The borrower understands that sometimes the lender is tied to cash. He calls him up and says, listen, I'm not pressuring you, but I could do some cash. Can you help me out? The borrower can say, I don't have right now. Oh, I do have, of course. If that's the case, as the Zera Shimshon, I don't understand. What's wrong that the tzaddik asks to sit in peace? It's kaviyochol, the lender, which is kaviyochol, the tzaddikim, are asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's true that you don't have to pay me for the reward until after 120, but I'm asking to prepay me a little bit. If Hashem doesn't want to give him, lo yitin, v'lo yakbid. Hashem shouldn't be makbid to the point that rogzoi alav Yosef, that the anger, the terrible tzad that he had from Yosef should come about because Kaviyachol Yaakov Avinu asked, please pay me early. So the Zera Shimshon says we have to explain this problem. We still haven't explained this problem. What was wrong with Yaakov Avinu asking Kaviyachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if we could say the borrower, the one who has to pay the debt that Hashem said he's going to pay a little early. So the Zera Shimshon explains the Beper Kama de Brachos Amr B'Yechanim Shum B'Yosi Shlosha Dvarim Bikesh Moshe Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu three things. You have a tzaddik that's good for him. V'tzaddik v'ralo. You have a tzaddik that's bad for him. And Yerusha v'toivlo, Yerusha v'ralo. We know this is the famous Tanya. The Tanya is based on this Yisoid, this question. And there the Gemara says, V'atirit zeh v'fi hamaskona d'hasam. According to the end of the Gemara over there, tzaddik v'toivlo, tzaddik gomer. You see a tzaddik that's going good for him, he's a tzaddik gomer. V'raloi, if you see a tzaddik that's struggling, that has nisyonis, tzaddik she'ena gomer, whatever that means. Upligi the Remeir. And this is actually an argument of Remeir. The Remeir says, Shtaim nasun, two of the three questions that Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he answered him. But one question he did not answer. Shenema, the answer is, I give chen. I give things to somebody even though they're not worthy, they don't deserve it. And I have rachmanis on people that I decide to have rachmanis. You can't understand the cheshbonis, so the fact that you see Reuven the tzaddik going well and Shimon the tzaddik not going well means nothing. I have a cheshbon why I want to have rachmanis on Reuven and not on Shimon, vice versa, and it's not something that I can explain. It's not something that a human mind can comprehend. That's Remeir Shita Atkam. Miyata. So now the Zera Shimshon explains. Kishar Kadosh Baruch Hu noisin toivel eze tzaddik mi atzma ilmer ritzayin. Ein anu yoidim. We don't know what's the reason. If Hashem gives Reuven the tzaddik certain good things, certain rewards, we don't know why. Is it because shehu tzaddik gomer? Kisaras Rabbi Yochanan Mishem Yossi. Is it because he's a tzaddik gomer, like the Gemara says according to Rabbi Yochanan that a tzaddik who's a whole tzaddik goes well? Or Hashem gives it to him for another reason. I have my reasons. So when we see Reuven, who's a tzaddik, going well, we don't exactly know what the reason is. Maybe he's not 100% a tzaddik, but Hashem decided to do good with him for whatever reason. Maybe he did a certain mitzvah, a different gilgul. Maybe somebody else has to benefit from him. We don't know. The dilma is a tzaddik ain't a kebaroi. Maybe this Reuven that we think is a tzaddik is not really a tzaddik. However, so therefore it's always ambiguous. And therefore, says the Zera Shimshon, if we don't know, So there's a benefit to that. What's the benefit by not knowing? We can't make a judgment on the status of this individual. However, if a tzaddik says, I want to live b'shalva, and Hashem answers him, why is Reuven the tzaddik asking to sit in shalva? Because he's tiny, I'm a big tzaddik. And therefore, as a big tzaddik, I want to get a little bit reward. So now, what's going to happen is that people are going to see Reuven the tzaddik who's getting a good reward and living well. He's going to say he's a good tzaddik. Shimon, who does not have it as well, he's not a good tzaddik. You're actually going to cause lies. You're going to cause people to speak bad about other tzaddikim. Why is Reuven the tzaddik asking to sit in peace? Because he thinks I'm a tzaddik gomer. The Ikir Meir ain't lehem taina klal. Because if we go like Reb Meir, Reuven the tzaddik has no taina. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's a tzaddik or not a tzaddik. Because according to Reb Meir, Hashem helps an individual because Hashem has a cheshbon. He's a rasha, he's a tzaddik, he's a beinani. It doesn't make a difference. It's not totally in schus. A person who is rewarded is not always in schus. It's true that there are certain mitzvahs that there is a reward, but in general and in totality, a person does not get parnasa because of schus. It's true that sometimes he changes his ways, he does better, Hashem is more likely to listen to his tefillos, but in general, as the Gemara says, hakol b'mazel talya, everything is totally b'mazel. But when a tzaddik asks Hashem to help him because he's a tzaddik gomer and Hashem helps him, now the other tzaddik who's not helped, you might see laz. And therefore, the Ikra Meir Elam HaKamtan Klal Lav Zchus T'ayim Milso Fichach Makbel HaKadosh Baruch Aleim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is makbel on the tzaddik that asks to live in peace because he's a tzaddik. She'ena min haroy she'tzadikim gemurim yasu ikr misvar zu. The tzadikim gemurim should not make this the ikr. Kedei shelo yitzi laz al tzadikim acherim she'enim yoshim b'shalva. That you should not be mitzi laz. You should not have rumors spread about other tzadikim. Oh, you know why Reuven is not living well? He's really not a tzaddik. Sh'amur she'enim tzadikim gemurim. Kedechazinon be'uvde de Rabbi be'pergud beis diksuvis ayin sham. Where Rabbi, after he was nifter, an incredible story. Rabbi would come every Friday night after he passed away and would make kiddush for his family. Nobody knew about it. One time somebody found out about it and Rabbi stopped coming. Why? Because people would say, Rabbi came because he was a tzaddik gomer, but what about the other Tanoim and Amoraim that never came? So in order not to be moitzi laz, Rabbi stopped coming. Right? There's no reason for them to live b'shalva. If Hashem wants, Hashem wants. If Hashem doesn't want, Hashem doesn't want. The taina that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had on Yaakov, whatever that means exactly, that he wanted to live in taina, even though there were no other tzaddikim who lived in that time. It's possible that Yitzchak already was nifter at that time, he wasn't alive. The problem was that people would learn Yaakov Avinu was a tzaddik gomer, so he lived in peace. But throughout the generations that a tzaddik didn't live in peace is because he wasn't a tzaddik gomer, and therefore Hashem did not want people to learn that. You know why Reuven is not living in peace? Because he's not a tzaddik gomer. Or you might see him laz al tzadikim acherim. There will be mighty laz on other tzadikim. We skipped 3 lines because we spoke it outside. Of course, says the Zera Shimshon, that Yaakov chas v'shalom did not mean at all 1 ounce of a mashu that chas v'shalom there should be some sort of memeza that he wanted that proved that he was a tzaddik and other people weren't. It's only a shigig of alma. At the worst, it was like a minor mistake. The Shimshon says an incredible thing. What's the problem with someone who did something b'shoigig? Because you do something b'shoigig, even if it's a 0.5%, the next time will be a little bit more, the next aver will be a little bit more, and eventually it will grow and double, right? What's the thing? You know, if I give you a penny and I double it, very quickly it comes to a very large amount. So if a person does even a minute avera, that avera eventually, if it's not stopped somewhere, can become a tremendous tremendous avera. It's called avera goreres avera. On the other side, there's a big idea, excuse me, to do even a small mitzvah. There's a very big concept. Get somebody to do a small mitzvah, because hopefully that small mashu of a mitzvah will a little bit bigger. Then the next one will be bigger. And then eventually you could do tefillin. And then eventually you'll learn Shabbos, so on and so forth. So the same idea, l'ra, you should also know that there's also a concept. You see somebody who's completely not religious, a little mitzvah. Because a little mitzvah can then do another mitzvah, a mitzvah, gereres mitzvah. And therefore, however, by Yaakov, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu was concerned about this idea of Aveira, Gereres Aveira, Hashem punished him right away. So now the Zera Shimshon says, okay, very good. Yaakov made him, again, Chas Hashem, we can't say it, because Yaakov Avinu was the Bechir Sheba'avos, but for Yaakov Avinu, this was not the right thing to do. So very good. Why was this the punishment? We learned many times that everything in this world is midah keneged midah. We always end up bringing the punishment or the reward on ourselves. Somebody does something good, and you say, it wasn't a big thing. So Hashem says, okay, so you don't hold that what he did is a big thing. So when you do that same thing, I'm not going to reward you either, because you already ruled that this is not a big thing, or vice versa. On the other side, so a person always has to be careful not to judge somebody, right? You should always judge somebody favorably, because in reality, when you're judging someone else, in Shemayim, they're judging you. Exactly the same thing, because Hashem will pull out and says, wait a minute, you did this mitzvah, you want a big reward, but when Reuven did the same mitzvah, you waved it off. So I don't understand, what's the difference? So Memela, the Shimshon now is going to delve what was the midah keneged midah, that the punishment that for Yaakov asking to live in peace was that Yosef should be captured and sold to Mitzrayim. And this is an incredible idea that only the Zera Shimshon can say. Umishum hachi asi shapir hakesher kofetz alav rogze shel Yosef umamish midah keneged midah lefi sheyosef choitzi laz al achiv v'zeh hoye laz gomer v'chomer. Yosef HaTzadik said lashon hara on his brothers. Lefi shoy lashon hara shu mevi aleim l'aviv v'Yosef lokach, he was punished b'shul lashon hara zeh. Ukeshenimkar le'eved v'hoye bitzar b'shul mashachat v'es lashon hara. When he was sold and he was bitzar, that he was punished, hoye misurages u misuraim beliboy al aviv. The Zera Shimshon says an unbelievable thing. I don't even know. If it wasn't the Zera Shimshon, I don't know how you could say it. That Yosef Avinu had kindness on Yaakov, shehu gorma benezikin shaloi, that he caused this damage. Shem aviv lohoyu mekabloi, if his father would not have accepted his words, if his father would have said, stop speaking about your brother like this, v'adarabba hoyu mechichoi, would punish him, would give him musar, lohoyu klum she Yosef lohoyu msapeloi dvarim ge'eliv. Yosef would have stopped. The reason that the brothers did not like Yosef was they felt that he was saying lashon hara. He was a malshin. He was causing them to be different problems. And Yosef, in his heart, had a shtickle taina on Yaakov that he did not tell him to stop. If Yaakov would have said, stop speaking bad about your brothers, judge them favorably, don't do this, Yosef would have stopped. Shem Aviv, as he says, repeating this line again, Shem Aviv lehoya mekabloi v'adarabba, if Yaakov would not have accepted his words and he would have given musar, lahoya klum she Yosef lahoya mesaped dvam keila. Nimtzu she'aviv garim shoyzeh lashon hara ba'olam. It was in reality that by Yaakov not stopping Yosef from speaking this, he caused this lashon hara. As the famous line says, the lav achbar aganav elachura garav. The mouse doesn't steal; it's the hole that steals. Right? There's a famous debate in police and criminologists. Do we stop the drug dealers? If there's no drug dealers, nobody to buy drugs from. Or do we stop the buyers, right? If there's no demand, then, there's no supply. This is a constant argument back and forth, right? It seems from the Gemara that it's not the achbarim that steal, right? Getting rid of the mouse is not the issue. The problem is that what's attracting the mice? It's the food. You have to get rid of the food, then eventually the mice will go away. And therefore here too, if Yaakov Avinu would have stopped Yosef, he wouldn't have said lashon hara. Okay, and therefore, what's the midah keneged midah? By Yaakov, indirectly, mamash shoygig, he would have caused people to say lashon hara on other tzaddikim by saying, you know why this tzaddik has good and this tzaddik doesn't because he's not really a tzaddik. It ended up causing that Yaakov Avinu indirectly caused Yosef to say Lashon Hara, that caused him to be sold down to Mitzrayim. Yes, it's true that ultimately it was the benefit of Klal Yisrael. Ultimately, we know that Klal Yisrael had to go down to Mitzrayim, but there could have been a lot of different ways. It could have been easier. We know that Avram went to Mitzrayim. Yitzchak would have went to Mitzrayim, if not that Hashem prevented him because he was on the Akedah. So Yaakov also could have went to Mitzrayim in a normal manner. And yes, there are Midrashim that said that if Yosef wouldn't have gone down in this terrible way, Yaakov would have gone down. We don't know. There's harbe shluchim lamokim, a lot of different ways to go. But Lamaisa, the way that it happened, that Yosef went down to Mitzrayim, was in a big tsar, was because he spoke Lashon Hara, and he indirectly blamed Yaakov Avinu. So it says the Zera Shimshon, in time, Yaakov. So why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu save Yaakov? He shouldn't have caused this Avera. Maksiv, Ragle Chasidav Yishma, Hashem watches the feet of his Chasidim. Therefore, Mishum Hachi, Hoisiv, Va'ama Kadosh Baruch Hu, Tzadikim, Mevakshim, Leisha B'Shalvo. Says the Zera Shimshon, now everything ties together like we mentioned before. Yaakov Avinu himself caused this problem. The Afsid Anashe, because by not being careful and not being concerned by the Lashon Hara that could come out on other tzaddikim, by not being concerned that, hey, if I ask for Shalva and I get it, and Ruvain asks and he doesn't get it, people will say Lashon Hara on Ruvain. And by Yaakov, Bechir Shabbat is not being concerned about this. Right? For Yaakov Avinu, this was mamish, even though it was a trillionth of an ounce of something, of a shoygei, still, Arvera Gareska, Avera, and the next Avera ended up being that for whatever reason Yaakov did not stop Yosef from saying Lashon Hara, which caused the whole Shalshalas of Yosef going down to Mitzrayim. So in a way, the Zera Shimshon says that Kofatz, it jumped on Yaakov Avinu because he wasn't Chashash. So you see, you have to be exceedingly careful on always being concerned not to speak Lashon Hara, not to speak bad about somebody else, to judge everybody favorably, because ultimately it will only be for your benefit.